Hello and welcome to TNCRadio.live. This is Keep On Talkin' with your host, Tom Kirk. Tom is an over-the-road driver with over 2 million safe miles. On this show, he interviews the people who help make the trucking world happen. It's real life, live from the road.
On this episode of Keep On Talkin', Tom Kirk talks to a cast member of Outback Truckers, better known as Sludge. Paul Sludge Andrews is an Australian driver who was born in New Zealand. He grew up in the trucking industry. His family started a transport company called Andrews Transport.
All right,
yes.
and you go by Paul Andrews, correct?
I go by Paul Andrews, but most people just call me Sludge nowadays. I've lost my name. It's become Sludge.
Well, I empathize because I've kept my last name sort of. Everybody, when you have a last name of Kirk, I'll give you one guess as to what my handle is.
Yeah, that's right, Kirk. Yep, that would just stick. Yep.
Whether I wanted it to or not, I got that in the 9th grade from a gym teacher, and no matter how hard I tried to shake it over the years, I think I could try calling myself Lucille, and it would, I'd still call me Captain Kirk.
Well, even my mother now calls me Sludge.
Okay, so I guess
there you
this
go.
brings up
Yeah.
the first question. How did you get the name Sludge?
Years ago when I first came over to Australia, because I'm a Kiwi, and I was born in New Zealand, and I came over here on holiday, and the first night I landed in Australia, we went out and had a few beers, and everyone here drinks like a 7-ounce glass of beer, and where I grew up, everyone drank jugs of beer. So later in the night, as we were getting ready to leave, I bought everyone a jug of beer, and they were all just dumbfounded that I did that. And I said, well, that's what we always drink. So they were going to leave their beer on the table, so I went down the table and drank all what was left in the jugs, just drunk it all. And then the next day, it started off as Sludge Pump, and then it went to Sludge Guts, and then within 24 hours, it stuck as Sludge. And of course, because I'd only been here 24 hours, every time anyone introduced me, it was always Sludge.
That kind of makes sense. So it's amazing how little things like that become a part of your life without you ever realizing it.
Yeah. And it didn't bother me. It was just the way it was. Even my wage slips used to have Sludge written on them in the early days.
So what was that again there? I missed that part. I apologize.
Even when I got my wage slips at the end of every pay week, they used to have Sludge written on them as well.
So your boss wrote Sludge on your paycheck.
Sludge written on my paycheck. Yep.
Oh, okay, so what did the bank say the first time you walked in with your paycheck and goes, I'd like the cash, I saw Sludge?
They were just, the check actually had my name on it, but all my paperwork always had Sludge written on it. And they couldn't get it until I explained to them what had actually happened. And then, which just made it even worse, because then you could never change it because it just stuck. Yeah.
I definitely can imagine that. No, actually, I can't imagine getting stuck with a name like Sludge. So let's just be honest on that one. But it sounds like you've had a great sense of humor about it, had a lot of fun with it over the years.
Oh, look, I have, and in the late 90s, we nearly changed it. We nearly got it back to Paul, but every time I rang a workshop to get trucks fixed or book trucks in, nobody knew who the hell I was. So it all became too hard.
I definitely can imagine it. So how long have you been driving truck?
Well, I'm 54 in March, and I started when I was 12. I used to drive the hay trucks around the paddock at 12 at home on the farm, and then we had a transport. When I grew up, we had a transport in New Zealand, and we used to do little square bales of hay every night after work. The men would go out and do it for farmers, and that's where I started my driving. So I was 12, 13 when I was out in the paddocks there.
And when would you say you first started driving on the roads? Around what age?
I was 15 when I started driving on the roads, in New Zealand, you used to be 15. So I started driving on the road at 15.
And so is that 15 for CDL, or is that just 15 for a regular vehicle?
That was regular vehicles, but we had a couple of little trucks that I used to just, once I had they used to have a size limit over there, and you could drive them then. And then when I got to Australia, I was 18. I started driving at 18.
Okay. So I'm guessing from the sounds of this, you've always in some way or another been kind of involved in trucking.
Yes, my whole life, yeah. I pretty much, I grew up with trucks. As long as I can ever remember, it was trucks. We had a station over there as well, but I never really had any interest in that. I was just always trucks.
Now, when you say a station, would that be like a gas station or a truck stop, or would that be something else?
No, that was a farm. Like we had 35,000 acres over there. Dad
That's
bought
what we
a
call
station.
a ranch here, but okay.
Yeah, well, you'd call that a ranch, yeah. Yep, a ranch, yeah. So, but to me, I grew up, that was just a motorbike track for me. And the trucks were my passion, always have been a passion.
You can definitely hear that in your voice. Now, did you come from a family of truck drivers or a family of farmers, or what was some of the backstory there?
The backstory, Dad, Mum worked in a clothes shop in town. Dad was he worked at the local meatworks where they killed sheep, and they had the chain going with all the sheep and stuff like that. And then after that, he had a pie cart, which was a caravan that did fish and chips and stuff like that at nights in town where we grew up. And then from there, he bought the transport. So that's how the truck started. We got out of that and started into the trucks.
Okay. So I know you said so for somebody who doesn't know, a Kiwi is a New Zealander, correct?
That's it. Yep.
And what took you from New Zealand over to Australia?
In the early days, Dad was killed with a truck accident. I lost a brother in a car accident, and then Dad was killed with a truck accident. And he was pinned. It was an old 1418 Mercedes. Anyone that knows the old Mercs would know that. And they used to have a scissor brake on it, and the brake failed, and he was walking along behind the truck in a loading bank, and it squashed him. So that was how he died. And then I actually came over here to Perth. I was only 16 or something, and I came over here to race motorbikes. One of the drivers I grew up with, which become like a stepfather to me, his first job was for my father. And I used to hang around with him in the trucks, and he used to cart me around all the time. He went around the world and settled in Perth. So that's how I was sort of probably at a lost end with no father and that. So I came over here and I lived with him and his wife. And as they grow, they had kids and everything, and I lived with them most of my life. And he taught me all about trucks, really. I was always under his wing when I was in New Zealand, but then once we got over here, I just learned everything, and he taught me everything and got me going in business.
So when you first got started in trucking or in business, as you put it there in Australia, did you start off as a company driver, owner, operator? How did that get going?
I was a company I drove in the early days. I was too young for a license, so I worked in a pallet mill. They do the export of cattle and sheep and that, where they make all the fodder. I worked in there during the day, and at night I would go with Derek and drive the trucks. So I pretty much was just a company driver. We had 3 trucks, and I drove with him until I was old enough to get my license, and then I climbed in from there. And
then what was your first truck when you became an owner operator?
When owner operator, I had a 2336, I think it was, Mercedes Benz. I used to. So I worked in the. I drove for a long time with Derek, and then I took over the workshop and ran all the workshop. So I bought this old Mercedes, and I used to cart watermelons at night to the markets from a farmer I knew.
Now, in the U.S., Mercedes are not a real common truck, and I know you've mentioned them a couple different Mercedes models over there. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to drive a Mercedes truck? Because over here, going back when you first started, probably Marmon International was still around quite a bit, but it's still pretty much, I'd say that your Peterbilts, Freightliners, Western Stars, Kenworths, to name a few. But I don't think I've seen too many Mercedes trucks on the roads, if any, over here.
Yeah, right. Well, Mercedes was they were quite they were a very used truck here, I suppose, in the early days. They were a real hardy truck. They were only little. They weren't big trucks. They had sort of a 5-speed box in them, the early 1418s and stuff like that. So they were they were big over here for the early years. And then sort of like Kenworth was big. Volvo came in, Scania. But the Mercedes, they had the Road Ranger gearbox. They weren't fast, but they were good, hardy trucks. Like they were well built for the terrain we had over here.
Now, were the Mercedes trucks, did they have a nose or were they cab overs?
The early ones had a short bonnet on them, just a little stub nose on them, and the later ones went over to cab over. So they're all cab over trucks here now. They're all the Mercedes. Just like your Volvo. Well, yeah, of course, the Volvos you have are all bonneted Volvos. We have the cab-over Volvos here.
Yeah, and I know once or twice they've tried to bring a revival back for the Class 8 over-the-road trucks of the cab-overs, and a lot of drivers seem to be real excited by them at first, but from what I've been told from some of the drivers who had driven some of the early ones who came over, they were having a lot of problems with them, particularly with the DPF system. Is that something that you guys have to mess with, DPF, or do you even know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, look, we have had DPF and EGR and all that sort of stuff. Pretty much everything we have here now, all our new trucks that come in here have AdBlue on them now. So, but we have a lot of trouble with it too. It's expensive to do anything with, to fix. The cost of it's horrendous.
It definitely can be, and then there's that. I mean, when it works and it works well, it's great. But when it goes down, it's an absolute pain in the neck trying to get parts, trying to get somebody who knows how to fix it, etc.
Yeah. Yep. And that's the trouble. All the latest technology stuff when it goes down, because here. When we go out into the desert, there's no phone range, there's no nothing. When things go wrong, you have sat phones, and so with the later model trucks, and that's why I still drive my Phantom, the 379. I sold the new one because pretty much with a piece of string and some wire you can fix it. Whereas with the new trucks, when they shut down, all the gravel corrugated roads just kill them, and then you have a lot of electrical trouble. So out here, you've got, you can be 1,000 k's from nowhere.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of, and join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
So let's talk a little bit maybe about some of the differences between what we think of as trucking in the U.S. or rough trucking versus what you are. Here in the U.S., we tend to complain in certain states like Louisiana and Michigan, when the paved interstates or some of the state roads are so rough that it feels like you could churn butter if you were pulling a milk or a cream tanker. I'm having a feeling from that laughter, your roads are just a little bit rougher than that.
Just a little bit. Like some of our roads, I remember when I was young, they used to talk about going into Telfer, and Telfer's into a mine site up in the north. And it's taken me 30 years, but I got there just before Christmas. I averaged about 5 kilometres an hour for 13 hours to get in there. It was like it was only 180 k's or something, but it took me 13 hours to get it in there. The road was that rough.
So about how many kilometers an hour did you say you were driving again?
About 5-6 kilometres an hour.
So that roughly, if I'm not mistaken, is roughly 2 miles an hour, give or take a little bit in a truck. So you were more or less going at idle speed.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, trucks go whizzing past you, company trucks and that, the ore trucks carting 3 trailers, they roar past you, but all the stuff just, as you drive down the road, you can see all the parts laying on the road, like when you're an owner-operator, you look after, everything costs money to fix. So you drive at a speed, even at that speed, was too fast.
Okay. So I know you said that was a place you'd always wanted to go to for a long length of time. Now that you've been there, would you want to go back?
No. He asked me to go back, and I said, "You're dreaming." I said, "There's no way in hell I'm going back in that road." I said, "I always wanted to go. I've been, and I'm not going again."
The amazing thing is I had a chance to talk with some of the ice road truckers, and one of them have gotten to know Kerry Hall. He hauled the ice road on the Dalton Highway for a number of years, and he hasn't been on it now for, I'm going by memory, but let's say a good 5-10 years or a little bit better. And I says, "Well, do you miss it?" He goes, "Sometimes, but I haven't yet got to the point where I've gotten desperate enough to call somebody, asking them to go with them on a run yet." So, I think from some of the ice road truckers and the loggers that I've talked to, they can probably relate to some of the roads that you've been on. But like I said, I'll be on a dirt road on occasion, or super rough road, and it might be a half mile or a mile, and I'm complaining by the end of it about my back and this, that, and the other thing. And from the sounds of it, this is more of a daily occurrence for you guys. I mean, are the normal roads that you run through the Outback that rough as well, or fairly rough? Are they a little more smooth, or are they paved?
Look, when we go, so on the Outback Trucker stuff, everyone sees that I go out to all the communities and stuff. All those roads out there are rough. Like some days, if you get it right and they've had a grader over it, it's great. You can zoom along. But most, 80% of the time, they're just corrugated rough roads. Because a lot of them just don't get the traffic on them, so they don't grade them. They're out to communities and out to station owners and stuff like that, because there's no power out there, so everything's done by generator and solar nowadays. So the last 15 years I've spent just running out on the dirt, doing stations with diesel and stuff like that, which I love. I absolutely love it out there.
So let me just clarify something a little bit here for somebody who's, I know a little bit, from my history class and geography, a little bit about Australia and how big it is. And, we always joke that Texas is big and Alaska is big, and, well, Australia is big. Let's just put it that way. When you go from like one province to the other, which would be the equivalent probably of some of our states, are the roads paved, or are they dirt, or how does that work? No,
all when you go from state to state over here, all the main highways are all paved. So they aren't all brilliant, but they're all paved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
so our main highways to drive around Australia is paved. Yeah.
Now, when you're going from state to state on those paved roads, is that what you guys refer to as the outback, or is what you refer to as the outback more the communities out in the middle of nowheres in the wilderness where they don't have the paved roads?
Yeah, that's where So that's the communities where they don't have the paved roads, they don't have power, everything's done by generator. Yeah, pretty much.
All right, that definitely helps that a lot. And forgive me, Paul, how many years did you say you've been driving again?
30, I think 30. I've been on the road for 32 years or something, 34 years.
I'm a full-time driver, so I've been doing this ballpark 16 years. I started in 2005, and October 26th or 28th will be my next anniversary, so you can do the math and figure it out from there.
Yep.
Going on 16 years. So I understand what you mean by kind of flashes by. So did you start off doing some of the outback stuff when you first started trucking, or was that something you got into? And if you got into it, what made you want to get into it?
The first stuff was probably over here in Aussie, was just running in and out of Perth, which is from where I grew up down in Narrogin. It was a 2-hour run. It was all paved roads. So we carted fertiliser out to the farms, and then we would bring the feed back to the feedlots where they used to store the sheep to go on the boats and stuff like that. So that was where I sort of started my career there. And from then on, I did a bit. So in the wintertime when it was quiet back here in Perth, I'd actually go into state. So I used to run across to Melbourne, Sydney, did a lot of express across that way in the early days, and that was out going across the Nullarbor, which is the plains where it's just nothing. It's just all desert and tussocks, and so I actually really got into that. I actually enjoyed that, and I suppose that's what probably hooked me into the outback, was doing that. So I used to do a lot of flat top work up, just general freight with the flat tops, carting houses in the early days up into the Pilbara, which is up into the mining areas. So that's what got me started with it. I probably really got into the outback about 15 years ago when I started carting fuel.
Okay, so what's some of the things that you have hauled over the years?
Well, what do I haul? Houses, done sheep, done cattle, sheep and cattle and stuff for a few years there. Done haul packs, big, 100-ton haul packs. Probably the most interesting one was I did 2 loads of camels one day. And I forgot all about that until I found a photo the other day. And, I was carting camels out of the desert back into Perth. They were going overseas.
Okay, now, when I think of Australia, I don't think of camels.
Yep. We have camels all over the place.
There, or?
Well, it is actually. It's funny because I always, when I go up into the stations and that, you always see 1 or 2. But when I went to Telford the other day, I come around the corner and there's about 10 camels. I put it on Facebook actually on my webpage, and there's half a dozen 10 camels running down the middle of the road. I couldn't get round them. There was mum and dad and all the young ones. So when you're in the outback, you do see them, but they're not the sort of thing that you want to see when you're roaring down the road, because they do hurt trucks. They're a bit harder to hit than a cattle beast.
I can imagine it's a lot like hitting a moose or an elk here in the
yes.
U.S.
Yep.
Now, are camels native to Australia, or are they imported?
No, they're imported, yeah. So in the years and years, and somehow they got imported, yeah.
Well, I think the next question that is obvious that has to be asked, 1 hump or 2?
1 hump.
Okay. These are
the ones that I seen the other day were 1 hump. Yeah, just 1 hump camels. There's probably 2 hump ones here, actually. That's a bloody... Yeah, I've never been asked that one.
Well, it's just when you're talking about literally the first question that came into my mind when you said you saw the camels was, one hump or two?
With one or two humps. I didn't even look myself. I don't reckon.
More intelligent questions before we go into the one hump or two. So.
Yeah, they were bloody camels, all right. I didn't look that closely. No, I think they were actually one hump camels. Yeah. So.
That's bloody interesting. Heck, I got to be honest. If I see a camel walking down the middle of the road here in the U.S., I'm probably going to pull over and call my boss and go, I think I've been driving too long.
I think I need a spell. Yeah.
Yeah, something. But it's why I just saw a camel. But anyways, so I think we already covered a little bit of what all you hauled. Was there anything else that you've hauled that you kind of want to go over?
Probably no. Pretty much. Look, over the years, I've probably hauled most things. There's probably not a lot that I actually haven't hauled. You know, I've probably forgotten about more than I've hauled than I can remember.
It's probably easier to say what you haven't hauled than what you have hauled.
Yeah. And anything, I love anything different. You know, anything that's different, I like doing. You know, of course, there's another, classic cars, done a heap of classic cars one time, like Model A Fords and Model Ts. Tractors, railway wagons. Oh, I've carted it all.
Now, one of the things that you've heard of, that you sometimes hear about is these road trains in Australia. What is a road train, and have you ever hauled one?
So pretty much every day we cart road trains here. Everything now is, so we have your single trailer, then we have one that's called a long vehicle, which runs out to 27.5 metres, which is two trailers. Whether that be a B train or two semi-trailers. We call that a long vehicle out to 19.5. Then we go to our road trains, which is 36, which is just two trailers with a dolly under the front. That's our standard 36.5 metre road train.
Okay.
Then from there we go to 50. So then from there we go to the 53, which I think now is 60, which you can run up to four trailers.
Wow. I know used to in the U.S. on certain roads, you'd still see a fair amount of doubles, depending. Like New York State, for example, on their toll road, they allow what they call a turnpike double, which is two 53-foot trailers.
Yep.
But in most cases, they're pups, so they're around 28, maybe 30 foot on that, and two of them. And at one point in time as a kid, I'd occasionally remember seeing triples on road trips. But I think in the U.S., for a variety of reasons, they've more or less done away with the triples. I think occasionally you'll still see them. But a lot of places did away with them. So just the thought of four trailers, yeah, that's a lot. Have you ever pulled four trailers, or what's the most you've ever personally pulled?
I have done four. Most of the time I cart three. So nowadays, now I've sort of retired and slowed down, I tend to just do two would be my maximum now. But when I had my tankers, I used to run two 40-foots and an A trailer under the front of it.
TNCRadio.live is proud to carry the Steve Summers Overnight Drive Show. TNCRadio.live is dedicated to commercial drivers. We offer the news, traffic, and weather you need, and the entertainment, sports, talk, music, and celebrity interviews you want to hear 24/7. We have original shows and trucker podcasts that feature some of your favorites, like Ice Road Alex Debogorski and America's Truckin' Sweetheart Marcia Campbell. TNCRadio.live is convenient and designed for professional drivers. The best part is we're free, and you can listen anywhere you are on the road. With just one tap, you can tune into Steve Summers and us right on your phone. Simply download our app by going to app.tncradio.live. That's app.tncradio.live.
Okay. So you just mentioned that you've partially retired. When you hear a lot of truck drivers here in the U.S., at your age with the amount of years you have in, some of them joke they're just getting started good, but some are also retiring as well. What led you to decide to partially retire?
Pretty much, I was sick of my youngest now is 15 and 18. That's the youngest two we've got at home now, and I think you end up working for your workers. I reckon I ended up spending. I work 7 days a week because by the time we get home on Friday, so we leave on a Sunday night, and I used to get home on a Thursday or Friday, and then I would spend all weekend working on the other gear, the driver's gear, making sure they're ready to go out Sunday night again. So I think I probably burned out again, and the kids are starting to get to that age. If I don't spend some time now, they'll be gone. So I just wanted to be at home a bit more.
I understand that completely because, I have a son who's about 18 years old, and, with my situation, I missed a good chunk of his growing up because I had to go out and earn a paycheck. Now, albeit I've been a company driver most of my career, and it really wasn't maybe till the last year or two where some of the freight rates have changed, where it's maybe been tempting to get into owner operating. But when I go and look at the headaches, at least for me personally, I've been pretty happy as a company driver when I figure in the benefits and everything else. And anybody who does go the owner-operator route, or I'm guessing in your case, not only have you been an owner-operator, it sounds like you've had a business with multiple trucks.
Yeah. So I started off by myself, and then I built it up, and I had 4 or 5 running in the end. So look, nowadays you actually make more money driving a truck here for a company than you can driving your own truck. Because when it breaks down, they just pick the phone up and go, "I've got a flat tire," or "It's broken down, bring a tow truck," and you start your little ice pack. Because here we have a little aircon that runs off a little diesel motor. So you just pull up, start that up, and you wait for someone to come and help you. Whereas when it's your own gear, you've actually, you've got to sort the problems yourself. There's a lot of headaches go with, being an owner-driver, chasing work. You've got the same as we have here, big companies that just try and eat you. So it all looks good on the outside, but you're actually probably working twice as hard as you should be to be an owner-driver.
And I've heard that from quite a few drivers I know who have, 40, 50 years of driving in here in the U.S. I've heard some very similar comments from them, and some of them have left owner operating for a variety of reasons, become a company driver, whether it's insurance benefits, just not wanting to have to work quite so hard, whatever it may be. So I definitely hear a lot of that as well here with the drivers that I know and talk to a little bit. So we've mentioned this a couple of times. Evidently, you've been on TV once or twice.
Yeah, just once or twice. Yeah, each year.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been on and maybe some of your experiences with that?
So 7, 8 years ago, they approached me to go on Australian Outback Truckers. A friend of mine from Celtics, she used to drive trucks, dobbed me in. So it all started, it was a bit of it wasn't that flash in the start. They were doing dumb things on telly that people don't need to see what happens with trucks and how hard it is to do things. So I sort of steered away for the first 2 years. Then I got involved in it. And it's actually, they've turned it around and it's become so I've done 7 out of the 9. Yeah, out of the 9 years, I've done 7 years filming. Each year I do between 3 and 5 shows. They come out and they film when I'm doing various things. for me, it probably started because I was going to go over. I wanted to go, and I still do, and I am going to go to ice roads. I know a friend that knows a friend over there that I could go over. I would have been there by now, but with COVID, it's buggered it up. But I want to go over and just spend a couple of weeks doing ice roads, just for me, because that's something that I'm quite passionate about, and I because I grew up in New Zealand in the snow and the ice and stuff. It's probably one of those things that will just tick one of those boxes in my career that I want to do. So I offered to Outback Truckers to go to, let's bring one of the ice road drivers out here and put them in my truck, and I'll go over there and we'll film over there and do an ice road one, because I actually have done two filmings out of New Zealand. We've flown to New Zealand and done them, and they just went viral. They went mad on telly, because there's a lot of Aussies, a lot of Kiwis in Australia and vice versa. So for me to go home and actually be able to film in my hometown was pretty special. I never even thought I would be on telly, let alone have the opportunity to take a film crew to my hometown and drive trucks there. It was pretty touching. It was pretty cool.
I definitely can imagine that, and it definitely sounds like it'd be really special.
Yeah, and that's something. As soon as we can open up and fly, we did some filming with a guy out of the UK here, and he wanted us to go. We had our tickets and everything booked, and then COVID buggered it all up, so we've never got there yet. So as soon, and that's another reason why when I say I've semi-retired, I want to go to the UK and drive over there. I want to go back to the US and do a bit of driving. I want to fill those boxes and travel a little bit and look around the world and drive trucks around the world. So I'm in a position now where the work I have, the customers know that as soon as the airports open up, we'll be out of here. And they don't mind, because I've got good customers, good friends that I work for. So I want to travel and drive and film, do a bit more filming, even if we do our own filming, around the world and see what everyone else does.
And I can definitely see and appreciate that. Now, I'm assuming you'll be traveling with your wife for this, or will you?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Now, does your wife drive truck as well, or does she just ride along with you at times?
No, she just comes at times. She comes with me. She probably hates them more than likes them, because it keeps me away from home all the time, So she comes, if we're going somewhere interesting, she'll come with me, Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. And I can definitely appreciate why she kind of has that feeling, because I know I've heard that from a few different people. Actually, at some point, I think it might be interesting to try to get her and like Alex Debogorski's wife together to do a show, just to talk a little bit about the differences in experiences of being the wife of a trucker who's out quite a bit, having kids, etc.
Yeah.
I think that could be a fun show.
That could be a good one. It is, because nobody thinks about it, but there's a lot of stress on them as well, and it's only the later years now that I probably see it, the nights where you push it and, you have the odd accident in here and there, because, we do a lot of miles out in no man's land, and, you don't sort of talk to her for a couple of days, and she stresses out that everything's all right. And, when Sunday night, they all go to bed and I drive out the gate here at 8 o'clock at night, she worries. And it's not till later in life now that I actually can probably respect and see that side of it.
I was maybe fortunate that I saw some of that a little earlier in my driving career with my now ex-wife. But, sometimes it would be that whole, well, you don't understand kind of back and forth thing between us. And I think anytime you have a couple where one drives and one doesn't, it is hard to fully understand what the other person goes through, because they're similar feelings of being away, missing certain things, dealing with the various headaches of being a driver or running a house alone, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, they may be similar emotions. They're completely opposite of ends of the spectrum, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
And I definitely give your wife a lot of credit for, the support she's given you over the years and helping take care of the family and things like that. So we've hinted at this.
And that's, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go right ahead.
And that's probably something that, I've been married twice before, and I'm not, this time around, and that's probably another part of the reason why I'm slowing my life down, because I don't want to do it again. We've got, we've both got kids and mixed kids, and we've got a great family, and I think it does over the years. It's taken its toll because you're never home. All those family things you miss out on, all the birthdays and all the, the first walk and the talk and it does take its toll over years,
It definitely does, and I can't agree more with that.
Great leaders challenge their people not to stop at the first right answer. Tighten the Lug Nuts is the book that will help you move past that first right answer to be more effective, more productive, and more successful. This book serves as a blueprint that can be easily applied by leaders, entrepreneurs, truckers, owner-operators, all of us in our everyday lives. This is one of the best leadership books you can read to help you accelerate towards your personal and professional goals. Plus, a portion of the proceeds will be donated to truckerschristmasgroup.org. Visit TightenTheLugNuts.com to order your copy today. Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at TruckingMovesAmerica.com.
Obviously, you can't be on the road all the time. What are some of the things you do in your free time, or even if you're out? Because, actually, let me change this question up a little bit before we go there. So, in the U.S., the way our hours of services are, and we have the electronic binders or e-logs in a lot of the trucks, we can drive. We have on an 8-day period, you have 70 hours which you can work or drive. You can be on duty for 14 hours at a time before you have to take a break. And I'm keeping the explanation here, the simple form instead of all the exception forms. But you have your 14 hours in which you can drive 11 before you take a 10-hour break, rinse and repeat. And if you want to try to get a few more hours in, if you work super efficiently, you can get like a reset in. If you're pretty much driving your clock every day, so that you can maybe squeeze in an extra driving shift, and that's in that 8-day period. But some drivers do like 8 to 9 hours a day, so they never really run out of hours. I'm guessing that Australia must have hours of service. How does that compare to the U.S.?
We're pretty much the same as you. We can get up. You can get up to a 16-hour day. But then by the end of your week, you're still only allowed to do that sort of 14 hours a day. We're allowed to do two weeks on, but then you have to have 2 days off. So you can work 14 days, I think it is, and then you've got to have 2 days off. Otherwise, we work 6 days a week and have the 7th day off, which is your break day. So you can do a 14-hour day. So we do a 5.5 hour. You do 5.5 hours in one period, then you have to have a half-hour break. 5 hours, actually, sorry. So you do a 5 hours, half-hour break, 5 hours, half-hour break, and then you do your 4 hours or 5 hours. We can stretch it, but the trouble with stretching is it catches up with you at the end of the week. You end up having to stop a half a day earlier sort of thing. So most days I do a 12-hour, 13-hour day, yeah.
All right.
So
I mean,
we have those. We have the cards you can put in. Not they came in and then they went out. Most stuff here now is GPSed, or we just have a book. As in my guys, we all just have a book, and you just do it in pen what you do for the day, and your kilometres are all written down.
Okay, so like the old-fashioned paper logbooks.
Yep.
That we used to use. Now, when you say the card, I'm guessing by that you mean a tachograph?
Yep, tachograph. Yeah, a few of them. The European trucks have actually got those more than the American style. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know I have heard, like I said, heard of the tachographs before, but it's just one of those things that I wasn't super familiar with them.
No, and I'm not either. They were around 10 years ago, and then they disappeared, and apparently I've heard people talking about them now. They're starting to come back in.
Yeah, and I know that's something that like you said, is more, I think, European, British, et cetera, and that's actually one of those things that I want to do at some point is get a hold of some of the UK drivers, the British drivers, and some of the other drivers over there and talk to that, just to kind of compare some of the differences, and maybe at some point, if I can get a few drivers from different countries together, I'd like to maybe have you back so we can all have a giant driver fest to kind of compare notes to see what's kind of similar and different, and of course we'd never ever swap lies or exaggerate everything, because everyone knows how wonderful and accurate truck drivers are in their stories.
Yeah, and their hours and their logs. And well, it's funny that you say that Derek that I grew up with, he's the one that I lived with here and his family and that. In the end, he went around the world and he met a woman in Norway and he married her. So he actually, we talk all the time now, and he'd probably be a good one for you to talk to. He lives
like
in Oslo.
Oh, that would be a lot of fun.
So that'd be a real good one, because he's had the Australian side, and now he lives over in Oslo, and he travels all around over there. He still drives trucks for a company over there, Bendix, I think they are.
Okay. When I think Bendix, I think brakes, but that's maybe more of a
I do too.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So
yep.
I'm not the
and an Aussie thing. Yep. No, you're not the only one. Yeah.
Well,
so he drives over there now. So yeah.
Now you said you did some work with the Outback Trucker TV show, and if I understood you correctly, when it first came out, it wasn't maybe the best depiction of trucking in Australia, and you played a bit of a role in maybe trying to get that a little bit more accurate. I know one of the things where I've talked to some of the ice road truckers and some of the other people involved with some of the series in the U.S., the producers have a tendency to try to make things a little bit too exciting, shall we say. But did you ever run into anything like that? And if so, how did you handle it?
Look, they always want it to be bigger than Banner. That's all about the drama of, the weather, it's going to rain, you're going to get stuck, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. But I'm probably a little bit lucky in that respect, because I do fuel. I laid it down loud and clear at the start that there is certain stuff when hoses blow, and we all know things go wrong, that you can't show. And I've been pretty lucky. We've had a couple of run-ins over silly things. But yeah, they always try and make it bigger than what it really is. And I think everybody sees that. I watch our ice roads, and you can see the bullshit lines in between everything. But I think it also, you've got to make it a little bit exciting too, It can't be boring and dull, I suppose. But you've got to... I learnt in the early days, it was hilarious. We were walking across a car park one night, going to have a shower at a roadhouse, and there was three of us, two of the film guys and me, walking across, and I was being an idiot, and my shorts fell down, and I didn't know there was a film guy over at the car filming us, walking across the car park. Next minute it goes on national TV, and there wasn't three of us, it was only me. They cut the other two out, and I'm walking along with my bag over my shoulder and my pants fall down, and it goes, we're a wide. So I learned really fast, don't do shit you don't want people to see.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I think you also probably learned that day, which I think every mother tells their kids, make sure you leave with a clean pair of underwear that doesn't have holes in it.
That's dead right, yes. Or make sure you have underwear on. Yes. So I learned pretty quick how they were going to play the game. Yeah.
And that really does make a lot of sense.
Stay tuned for part 2 of Keep On Talkin' and Tom Kirk's interview with Sludge, a recurring cast member of Outback Truckers. Tune in next week.
Hey, thanks for listening to TNCRadio.live's presentation of Keep On Talkin' with your host, Tom Kirk. For more information or to ask a question or to tell more about your story, send email to info@tncradio.live.